Howdy guys, it's Joe here. Today I'm just going back to a strategy that I really only talked about a few days ago, but with the tanks being nerfed quite a bit and with Andage becoming a lot worse, well, the strategy has become much stronger and just works much better now. I mean, it was already working when the tanks were very strong, but now it works even better. And before we get started, I do want to also say that doing this can work on King of the Hill. Definitely works amazing on defense, and even though it shouldn't really work on offense, it does actually do decently well because these guys work so well with many of the offensive characters and make the offensive characters so much stronger. So what is the strategy? Well, we're going back to that Torb / Symmetra. As well with these two characters though, I will also add Reinhardt. Really, he's kind of essential for these strategies to work way too well, so add that guy to there, and then you got yourself a really great team. Of course, Torb can supply a ton of damage. He can supply really far range, consistent damage, consistent power, and mainly he can supply his E's, which give you 75 shield. As well with that, we have the turrets from Symmetra. We have her insane damage to close range units. We have her E, which can let you go in, which is pretty good on offense and King of the Hill. Works decently well on defense as well. And also we have those right clicks, which can do a little bit of poke damage, along with Torb's left clicks, which can do some poke damage. But I already talked about that in the last video. So why is this doing so well right now, and why is it actually a pretty good strategy? Well, it's because of the 75 shield and the 75 armor that you get from Torb's E and from the Symmetra health pack. And of course that sounds pretty good, you know, you're like 75 plus 75, that's pretty decent. But what makes it so amazing now is that since we don't have only tanks, it becomes even better. Of course, giving your tanks an extra 150 shield and HP, I guess, really can be quite nice. But when you add 150 armor and shield to other characters, it does a lot better and does a lot more wonders. And especially when you have squishies versus other squishies, well, your squishies almost always win. As well with this, I would like to add that since the tanks really can't take as much damage anymore, well, Torb's consistent damage does help a lot. And this actually does decent against dive comps as well, as, you know, Symmetra's shifts do pretty well against that. Torb does pretty well against that. And if you go with a Reinhardt and some other characters that do decently well against dive comps, well, you should be doing fine against those as well. So yeah, that's kind of how the strategy works. I talked about that earlier, but let me talk about how this particularly works, / what characters I feel like it works really great for and really great against. So yeah, let's just get started with that. The first character that I feel like this works amazing with, and is probably kind of busted, is Tracer. You know, Tracer's main bad part about her is simply that she has so little HP. She can get bursted instantly, and if she gets hit like once or twice, well, she can use her E, but other than that, she's kind of screwed. What's so great about this, though, is that with the shield, Tracer can take a little bit of poke, hide for a second, and then the shield will come back up, and then, once the opponent gets past the shield, you have a ton of armor that takes a while to get through before you can finally get to Tracer's health pool. What this all adds up to is a character that is extremely mobile, extremely tanky, and does a ton of damage at close range, that can also escape from pretty much any situation. Yeah, it's quite amazing, and it's just as good as you would probably think. You can poke a lot easier as well, because you don't really have to worry quite as much, and overall, I think this is probably going to be one of the most busted characters that you can bring into this strategy. Next, I'm also going to say Kenji. He's pretty much like Tracer. I would say that Tracer works a little bit better, at least in my own opinion. The nice thing about doing this with Kenji is that when he has his ult up, it's a bit harder for the enemy team to burst him in his ult. But other than that, I'd say Tracer usually works a little bit better just because she has a bit more mobility. Next, we got a bit of a shout out to all the support mains out there. You're getting a little bit of support by these two characters. And I'd say that honestly, this strategy is one of the easiest ways to make your supports last a lot longer. And of course, having more supports equals having more healing for a longer amount of time. And the supports die less, the supports can't really get bursted, and yeah, it's quite amazing. Some of my favorite things about this is that it makes it a lot harder for Widow to kill them, it makes it a lot harder for someone like Reaper to kill them, and as well, really, McCree can't kill them much anymore, especially if he tries to E right click. Well, the armor just protects it, and they live. So, there's a lot of counters that this does give, a lot of checks that it adds to your supports. As well, sometimes it makes it that the supports can now 1v1 a lot of the other characters because now they have a very high health pool, especially Zenyatta. He can play kind of aggro and actually get a lot of kills with this, which I just personally like a lot. To the next beneficiary, I'm going to say Reaper. Reaper loves this strategy because of the fact that if your team has it and the enemy team doesn't, you can burst through people at close range while they can't really kill you way too much fast back. One of the main problems about Reaper is that sure, he does a lot of damage, but he also has to get in very precarious situations, and often the enemy team just kind of bursts him really quickly. or they just kind of poke him out and there's not much he can do, so he just has to run away, try again later. But with this, you can often get close in their faces, and you can actually finally 1v1 tanks pretty easily. They're going to try to shoot you, but you have such a higher DPS that now they're going to barely get through the shield and barely get through the armor, when then you can just start blasting them in the face. Now, of course, with this strategy, with every character, the entire team turns around and starts shooting you, you're going to die, but if you still do position pretty well, you can do a lot of damage. And to the final person that I really feel like can help you quite a bit with the strategy, I'm going to say Soldier, mainly just because it gives you a little bit more survivability. Now, Soldier is already a very good character, you should probably already pick him up in this meta because he's like one of the best, but adding that extra shield, that extra armor, makes it will live a lot longer, makes it can, supply a lot more DPS, and with his E, it makes it that he can do even better. The shield regeneration plus his E, it adds up well enough, and since he's so strong in the meta anyways, well, you can add him into your team comp, and it works well enough. Now to the characters that this counters. First off, I'm going to say it counters every single mirror match in the game because, well, your team has 150 more health than the other team. Normally, mirror matches are based 100% off skill, but in this case, you got a really good advantage. So that's a nice way to start. Now, as far as some of the other characters, I'd say that this really does counter more characters than I'm going to say, but these are some of my main favorite ones that it does counter. The first one is going to be McCree, because when McCree tries to flashbang you, then right-click you, you can live, and you can often actually kill the McCree if you're somewhat good afterwards. And while he's reloading, you can just go in. Yeah, it's one of the funniest things that I've done. I really like to do that against him. Secondly, I'd also say Widow, because she can't two-shot body shot you anymore. A lot of Widows just don't even happen to go for headshots because they just really aren't skilled enough, and if they happen to do this, well, Widow's kind of screwed in a lot of cases. As far from there, I'd also say this counters a lot of tanks. I made a whole video about how the strategy purely counters tanks, and while the strategy works even better with other characters, against tanks it supplies consistent DPS, you can go under the tanks, you can really just burst through them, it's really quite great. From there, it also beats Hanzo, because if Hanzo gets a headshot versus quite a few of the people, he doesn't one-shot them anymore. So, yeah, that's pretty funny, and that's really, really effective for your team. Next off, we also have Mei, who, if you're at full health and she left-clicks you until you get frozen, then right-clicks you in the head, won't actually kill you. So that's a fun thing as well. It's just a kind of funny counter, and it also makes it that all the characters that try to poke you, well, you can regenerate that with your shield regen, so that's a nice addition as well. And then finally, we have Winston, because Winston really works off ticking his damage quite slowly, and as we saw with Diva versus Winston, well, armor just kind of mauls Winston. And as I would say earlier, the strategy works well against every tank, but against Winston in particular, it just kind of mauls him out of the meta. And again, that's just kind of how this works out. At least that's how it works out in my own mind and in some of my own games. Just kind of give people shield, give people armor, set up your base, or if you're on offense, just set up over and over and over again, try to get some picks with these characters, and then go in with your strong team comp that is essentially just tanks on non-tank characters. Go in, get some kills, or you can also just sustain on the cart for an extremely long amount of time with high far range DPS. So it does have a lot of benefits. Well, one of the problems I can see is that Torb honestly isn't always the best hero, doesn't have the most damage output, and if you can't get your turret out well, it can be a bit of a problem, but otherwise I'd say it's pretty good. Symmetra's a great hero right now, and you can also just bring in any other good hero that comes into the meta, as the strategy works with every single hero in the game, really. But yeah, there you go. As well, the strategy isn't really way too hard, so I'd say it's one of the least skillful strategies that you have to pull off for yourself. Symmetra, you don't have to aim way too well as well with that. Torb's rivet gun, his right click, you don't have to aim way too well either, and if you just put down your turret around corners so the enemy just can't instantly burst them, yeah, you got a lot of consistent DPS, a lot of easy DPS, and of course giving your teammates shields and armor doesn't take any skill at all, because you're just kind of pouring it on the ground. So yeah, I'd say that's really how the strategy works, and that's how you should probably bring it into ranked. I've been having a lot of really good games with this, so if you want to try it out for yourself, I'd say definitely go for it. As always though guys, if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, comment down below if you've ever used this strategy before, or if you're planning on using it in the future, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.